Good morning. Coming to you as always from the Scottish borders. Here is my face, and now I'm Darkman, apparently. That's a good 90s film reference, potentially, for any of you of the right vintage. I'm increasingly discovering, as doing the job that I do, quite often come into contact with increasingly junior members of medical and nursing staff and medical students and things, and a lot of my jokes as I get into my 40s are now becoming quite dated. So I made a Fight Club reference the other day. Someone said something about Blood Club. I said, I started talking about it, and I said, I've just broken the first two rules of Blood Club, and they looked at me a bit quizzically. And then I said, do you know, I've been realising this recently, that a lot of my references appear to be dying a death. So that's surely a marker of middle age, if ever there was one. But anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I want to talk about why we should challenge our assumptions and what we can do about it. So the reason I was thinking about this, originally I was going to talk about stereotypes, because I was chatting with my other half about this recently, about doctor stereotypes. So whether anyone that's watching is a doctor, or whether you work with doctors, or whether you have to call upon the services of one from time to time, you probably have a bit of an idea in your head of what your kind of stereotypical doctor is. And I think there is a lot of it is quite negative. So you're rich, privileged, very intelligent, perhaps a bit arrogant as well. I think that's probably the predominant doctor stereotype, and you can paint a similar picture about any profession, I guess, if you kind of canvass the public a la Pointless style, Family Fortunes or whatever our survey says. Then you would probably be able to paint a similar shared picture that a lot of people share about certain professions. So I'm not actually going to talk about that specifically. I do think we need to challenge that kind of thing, but some of that is also down to the some of the arrogant doctors to temper their behaviour, so I'm not going to focus on that too much. But I think it does represent a bit of an example of how we can assume things, and assumptions are a helpful thing on the whole. You can usually find the positive intent in most behaviour, and assumptions sound bad, but actually there is positive intent behind them. So I've talked a bit about this before in blogs and probably in videos, but when it comes to decision making, we have a couple of different forms of that, and there's kind of snap judgment, kind of reflexy type decisions that we make with limited information that are obviously quite quick, and then there's the kind of slower, more ponderous things that we have to think over, and that's described quite well in the book Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, talking about system 1 and system 2 thinking. So these kind of shortcuts are important, mental shortcuts or heuristics, but it does come with a risk of bias. So the problem is if you're making assumptions, so assumptions for me are quick, there's not an awful lot of pondering going on there. You're actually making up your mind very quickly based on limited information by definition. So I think it's important to start to try and build in some awareness of when you think you might be making an assumption about something, okay? Whether that be about people, whether that be about a situation, okay? And your mind will probably do this automatically, so I'm not saying to stop making judgments, because I actually don't think that that's possible, that your brain is probably going to make those connections automatically. But I think you just need to recognise that sometimes you just need to take a pause and gather some more information, okay? A lot of it comes in with that, a lot of these things can be helped just by taking a beat, taking a pause and thinking, right, is there anything else that I need to know here? And taking a bit more time before you make kind of final decisions about things. Am I making an assumption? What is that assumption? Do I need to challenge it with any more evidence? Okay, as always with these things, there is a bit of a balance to be sought. Clearly if you make assumptions about things, you're going to get it wrong a lot of the time, but equally you can't be paralysed by a lot of information and have paralysis by analysis. Okay, sometimes you just need to take a step in the right direction. But my only plea to you is have a little bit of a think. Are you suffering from heuristic bias because you're making snap judgments and assumptions about things? Do you need to gather some more evidence before you make a final decision about what you're doing? So that's all I really had to say, and particularly when it comes to people as well. I very much have adopted the Stoic philosophy of, I can't necessarily control what people think of me. I can influence it though by how I behave, but then I need to turn that torchlight inward towards me and say, well, it's all about concentrating on being a good, kind person, as much as I can possibly be, and then the people that are around me will make a choice about whether I am someone that they think is a good person or not, or whether they don't. But all I can do is I can control how I show up, which then in turn can potentially influence how people feel about me, but I can't let how other people appear to feel about me influence how I kind of think, feel and behave. So stick to what you can control, don't make assumptions. Well, make assumptions, but then challenge them. Okay, catch up with you soon.